Alrighty, time to talk with Savings Scribes, and this week we're talking to Bea Garcia, finance journalist for Savings.com.au, who's recently written a piece exploring all the different various green car loans that are available in Australia at the moment. Now, this might be of significant interest to people at the moment in this current climate with petrol prices going through the roof. They might be eyeing off some of those EVs and hybrid cars that can save them a whole lot on fuel, and probably looking at various finance options because these cars, particularly when brand new, are not that cheap. G'day, Bea. Great to have your company on another episode of the Savings Tip Jar.
Hey guys, great to be back.
Hey Bea, really keen to talk to you about this one, especially we've got so many new green cars in quotation marks because green cars can vary depending on whether you're talking about hybrids, EVs. We've got so many new EVs on the road lately. I've noticed that BYD Shark around everywhere, the Ute. So getting loans for these sort of cars is probably imperative for a lot of people looking to pick them up. But before we jump in, do you have a savings tip for us?
Yeah, so my savings tip for this episode is to shop on a full stomach. It probably isn't the first time you've heard of that, but I find that, it's a very effective trick. I notice that if I shop whenever I'm hungry, I overspend on stuff I don't even need. But then I've eaten, I stick to my grocery list and end up spending less.
That is a definite rule in my household, actually. Like, we've made it a point that we eat before we go to the supermarket. That's a really good savings tip.
Yeah, good tip, Bea. Yeah, whenever I shop at the supermarket when I'm hungry, I always somehow go home with one of those roast chooks. That they have. The smell is just so enticing, and you just go, let's grab one. It's quick and easy dinner. So that's certainly a good tip. Get onto the topic here. Green car loans. What is the main difference between a green car loan and a regular car loan? And can you actually save money with a green car loan?
So this is probably the first thing people want to know. So for green car loans, they're basically car loans designed for eco-friendly rides. They can be like electric vehicles, hybrids, or other low-emission cars. They usually come with perks such as lower interest rates, fewer fees, or better terms compared to regular car loans. The first thing people probably want to know is it cheaper than regular car loans? So, kind of, but not always in the way that you'd expect. A lot of banks in Australia are starting to offer incentives if you're buying what they classify as, a green car. As I mentioned, that could mean lower interest rate, fewer fees, or small perks like cashbacks. For example, some lenders shave off around 1% from the interest rate, while others might waive things like $150 establishment fee, or maybe give you a few $100 back after the loan is approved. Now, on paper, that does make sense. These loans are cheaper than standard car loans. But the key thing is that the discount usually isn't massive. It's helpful, but it's not life-changing on its own. Where it gets more interesting, especially now, with fuel prices being unpredictable, is when you look at the total cost of owning the car. Because if you're paying a slightly cheaper loan with a car that uses less fuel, or maybe no fuel at all, those savings start to stack up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's in a lot of banks' best interests these days to offer incentives for people buying lower emission cars or putting solar panels on their house. It's something we've seen a lot in recent years. And I guess it stacks up for them when they're tallying up their financed emissions through the year. Getting people on with more eco-friendly assets makes sense for them because they can say that they've got lower emissions in their finance book than other banks. So, that makes sense in that way. But I guess what comes to mind here, Bea, is these green cars are often more expensive. You often have to buy a newer car in order to qualify for a green car loan, as opposed to, an older car that might be higher on emissions. Can the savings from a green car loan actually outweigh the cost of buying a more expensive green car?
I guess this is where things get a bit complicated. Like you've pointed out, Brooke, cars that qualify for these green loans are either brand new or maybe fairly recent models. Naturally, newer cars cost more. So even if you're getting a better interest rate, you're often borrowing a bigger amount to begin with. So upfront, you're still spending more money. That's just the reality. And then you also have to watch out for stuff like, the proposed new road user tax for EV cars. Right now, if you're driving a petrol or diesel car in Australia, every time you fill up, you're handing over just over 50 cents a liter in fuel excise. But drivers of EV vehicles essentially pay nothing. And if you bring in the fuel crisis angle, this is where the conversation shifts a bit. If you're driving a traditional petrol car right now, you're kind of exposed to whatever happens with fuel prices. If it spikes, your weekly budget takes a hit immediately. But on the other hand, if you're driving a hybrid or an electric vehicle, you're at least partially protected from that. Hybrids use less fuel and EVs don't use fuel at all. So over time, especially if fuel prices stay high, those ongoing savings can start to maybe balance out the higher upfront costs. But that said, it's not really automatic. If you don't drive that much, or maybe fuel prices stabilize in the future, it might take a long time to actually break even. So it really depends on your lifestyle. Things like how often you drive, how far, and how long you plan to keep your car.
Yeah, absolutely. Geez, but that proposal, I don't know if it's a formal proposal or just a rumor that the government is considering a tax on EVs. Surely EV drivers will be absolutely seething about something like that. They've probably saved an absolute bucket ton over the last few years, not getting hit with that fuel excise tax. Obviously not having to pay for fuel, but that excise, which is 50 cents a litre, imagine you're getting a 50 cents per litre discount on fuel. Like you're laughing all the way to the bank, particularly at the moment. EV drivers would hate to be hit with an equivalent tax. But, it's been talked about generally just there being maybe just a road user charge where, the more times you use the road, the more times you're driving, essentially, the higher you pay. But then also, is that a bit unfair because the people that tend to be doing the most driving, that live the furthest out from the city, will tend to be lower income households that can't afford to live close to the city. So it's one of those tricky ones at the moment. We'll see what comes out. I think they'll be announced in the budget there. But just the last one from me, Bea. Do green car loans make switching during a fuel crisis more financially realistic?
So for me, they help, but they don't completely solve the affordability issue. Like I've mentioned, most green car loans are tied to newer vehicles. This means higher upfront costs and larger loan amounts. So even with a discounted rate, you're still committing to a significant financial decision. What green loans do is lower the barriers slightly. A reduced interest rate or added perks can make repayments maybe a bit more manageable for you compared to a standard loan. And in the context of a fuel crisis, that small reduction in loan costs can make a bigger psychological and financial difference. People are already feeling the strain from fuel expenses. So the idea of locking in lower running costs while also getting a slightly better deal can make the switch feel more justified. But yeah, it's important to be realistic. The loan itself isn't what makes the switch affordable. It just makes it easier to justify if you're already considering buying a new car. So in a way, green car loans really aren't the main driver of change. They're more of just a nudge. They support the decision, especially during a fuel crisis, but they don't replace the need to carefully consider your budget and long-term costs.
Absolutely, yeah. I think car loans are one of those segments of the financial market that the advertised interest rate isn't necessarily the interest rate that you're going to get. They take into account things like your age, your credit score to a higher degree than home loans typically do, the car you're buying, how much you're planning to use it. And potentially that's because, I would assume that's because of the fact that the loans are secured against an asset that is depreciating. So buying a newer car typically gives you a lower interest rate anyway, because the bank, if something does go wrong, can reclaim an asset that is worth more than a used car might be. But yeah, we've seen so many banks come out offering green home loans. I mean, many of the big four do. Those kind of climate-focused banks like Bank Australia, they've got green car loans on the books. So yeah, it's definitely maybe something worth considering if you're thinking about buying a newer car and you think it might be a low emissions car or an EV or a hybrid. Potentially check out green car loans. They might tip the balance for you. Thanks so much for coming on the Savings Tip Jar, Bea. It's been great to pick your brains on this one.
Thanks, Tom and Bro.
Thanks, Bea. Cheers.